I personally believe there's one thing in particular that's harder than pretty much anything in freelancing. And it's not code delivery. It's not the deployment of that code. It's getting the client to deploy code for.
I know if I lose all my jobs, everything goes to zero. I can get on that phone, I can show up in people's places, and I can freelance. It's a skill that you can't take away from me.
They're going through these cheesy sale pitches like, you give me 30 seconds, I'm going to give you $30. Like that kind of, you don't need to do that, man. Like people don't want to be sold to, but they do want to trust that the solution that they get is actually solving a problem.
Build a list and go after it. For my students, I always say your first deal has to be $300 or more. And consistently, the difference between a $300 deal and a $5,000 deal is just they ask for more money.
I still believe this. An educated customer makes educated decisions.
Treat each person well. Give them the things that they actually need. Even if they're not the client for you, point them in the right direction.
I'm getting as much of my money up front as possible, if not all. But I make sure delivery is not happening until I'm fully paid and like everything is clear.
Clients that are going to jerk you around and do horrible things aren't going to pay a deposit. So even though you might lose someone because they don't want to pay a deposit, you just saved yourself months of headache.
The thing that I always say is like, as you're learning, keep having conversations, keep the resume polished, keep the LinkedIn active, keep the network going, and pivot when you can, right?
Don't go freelancing full time until you have at least 2 evergreen clients, meaning a client that comes back and gives you work after work after work.
What's going on, everybody? We are back with another episode. I am your host, Danny Thompson. I'm Director of Technology at a company called ThisDot Labs.
And I'm Leon Noel, Managing Director of Engineering for Resilient Coders and a wonderful community member at 100 Devs.
Today, we are talking about something that, honestly, the reason why we're talking about it, I tweeted it out minutes ago, and one of the first responses was, I have no clue how to do this. How to actually freelance.
Yeah.
We have similar philosophies and different philosophies. We have different ways of thinking about things. I kind of thought today we can just kind of cover the gambit on ways to, number one, look at freelancing if you want to start freelancing. Number two, understanding why or who those certain customers could even potentially be, but certain strategies. And I'll start this off by saying there's one thing that I feel like a lot of people on social media glaze over, and it's probably the hardest part of freelancing. And well, I'll just ask this.
Yeah.
Listeners, what do you think is the hardest part of freelancing? Spitball a couple things. I'll give you the answer. I personally believe there's one thing in particular that's harder than pretty much anything in freelancing. And it's not code delivery. It's not the deployment of that code. It's getting the client to deploy code for. I feel like that's the one thing everybody makes it seem like so easy on, I'm a freelancer and I'm coding on the beach and this and that. Honestly, the hardest part is actually getting the clients.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people glaze over that, or they just automatically assume people can get the client easy. And I saw a video the other day. I shared it with you, Leon. We were just talking about this earlier, where a guy for like 40 minutes was recording and was just cold calling people. And I thought this was phenomenal. He didn't get a single client the whole video, unfortunately. But I feel like it was because his approach was wrong. There's so much that he can improve upon, but I really applaud that grit, that effort to even publicly fail like that in a way. But really, he's not failing because every single no that he got just brings him closer to that inevitable yes. And so I guess, like, what are your takes on this? Because I know I have a little bit of a different take, but I also come from like a different school of thought on this one. Maybe we'll start with yours and then we'll go to mine.
Yeah, sure. I think freelancing is the most important thing you can do as you're transitioning into a new career in tech. I think it's kind of a pathway that both of us have taken to get where we are. For folks that don't know my background, I was in university, didn't have money for food, put up an ad on Craigslist. I was going to build somebody a website, got a client the same day. They paid a deposit. I skipped my butt all the way to the grocery store, bought pasta and pasta sauce, and I was stocked for a month. And that just like flicked a light bulb in my brain. Like a switch was flipped. Like I can turn these skills into real dollars that puts real food on the table. And so much of what I do is because I want that experience for y'all. And if it's not something that you've incorporated into your practice, I highly encourage you because one, it's putting food on the table. It's money in your pocket. It's real world experience. You're working with real clients, real deliverables, real demands. And it's just something that if you know you have in the back of your pocket, everything else becomes easier in life. I know if I lose all my jobs, everything goes to zero. I can get on that phone, I can show up in people's places, and I can freelance. It's a skill that you can't take away from me. And so for me, I think it's one of the most important things. Help smooth over gaps in your resume as long as you actually get real clients. And so I guess like if we're talking about like how we go about it, I think my first approach that I always tell folks is start with your already network. And I think people will very quick to dismiss the network that they already have, whether it's friends and family, whether it's that dusty Facebook you haven't used in a while, whether it's your church group, whether it's the pickup league you play in on the weekends. All of those are leads. Somebody's brother, sister's mother's cousin needs a website. And once you start putting yourself out there, you start talking about yourself. I always like to think of like Bob Vance from The Office on Bob Vance, Vance Refrigeration. As soon as you start introducing yourself as someone that can build websites and solve problems for folks with software, and you put it out into the world, you ask the pastor to put it in the church bulletin, you ask your aunts to share it on Facebook, and you start putting it out into the world, you'll be surprised how those first couple of clients can come your way, and you're not really pitching or hard selling. You have a warm intro to a lot of these places. So that's where I tell people to start. Not everyone has that same privilege, but I think a lot of people really over dismiss that first step that can lead to a lot of really good things early on.
You know what's interesting? You said something there, and this is something I've been saying for years. Is like a lot of people when they think about freelancing, Leon, they're thinking like from the terms of like, where's that Fortune 500 that I'm freelancing?
Mm.
Where's this like tech company that is going to keep me on retainer for months? But you're talking about like the pickup league, the church, like people that you know, and the strategy for that is very different from one side to the other. But the question then becomes like, okay, let's say the pickup league is like, you know what, we need a score tracker or website thing or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, what are you charging for that? Like, what are you like? We're you're talking about pasta and pasta sauce, right? So, like,
Yeah.
what are we? What is that conceptualized?
Yeah, I think my approach to this has changed over the years. When I have someone that needs a solution, right? My first goal is to never give them a price because I don't know what they need. I always kind of want to know two things. I want to get you on a call and I want to know everything that you dream about at night. What do you need? All the bells, the whistles, like your hopes, your dreams. If I build the perfect thing, what do you hope that turns into? Because sometimes people are like have some sort of goal they're trying to get to, but the thing they ask you for isn't going to help them get there. So I want to know all of that. At the end of that, I'm going to ask you one question. Wow, this seems like a lot. What is your ballpark budget for getting all of this done? I don't need to know your exact budget. I don't need to know down to the dollar, but what are we talking about? Because if you got $100, I got a firm handshake and maybe a head nod coming your way. If you have $1,000, we're talking. If you got $10,000, we're really talking. So I need to know your ballpark budget so I know where we're at in this game and what I'm going to be able to provide for you. So I'm not somebody that likes to break down by hour. I'm not somebody that likes to break down by project until I know your ballpark budget, and then I can tell you whether or not it's a good fit. Now, for me, not all projects are good fits. Back in the day, every project was a fit. It was just what can I deliver so that I can overpromise and underdeliver on that budget and that expectation. And so for me, it's not about the price you're charging. Maybe you have that number internally, but it's like, what can I get done for my client at their budget? And I always want to meet them where they're at.
Yeah, my strategies are different depending on the conversation that I'm in, right?
Mhm.
Like, and so for me, if it's a smaller project, my strategy is gonna be completely different. So I'll kind of give you the strategy in the beginning, and I've told the story before. I'll tell it again. The very first website that I ever sold in my life was to a Mexican restaurant that I was eating at, right? And I wasn't even working in tech yet. I was still learning off of like free code camp and Udemy and stuff like that. And I was eating at this restaurant, and the website was a hot mess. That's literally like the nicest way you can describe it. It was just messed up in all kinds of ways. And so I asked the waitress, I was like, "Hey, can I speak to the manager?" She's like, "Did I do something?" I was like, "Nothing wrong with you. It's everything to do wrong with your website." And so manager comes by. I was like, "Look, if you just fix this, this, and this, you're going to be in a really advantageous position." I didn't think nothing of it. I was just like, "This is what I've learned. I can't even download your menu. Like, this is messed up. I don't even know if you're open tomorrow because it was gonna be Sunday, and,
Yep.
I live in Memphis, Bible Belt, sometimes things aren't open." So I was like, "I'm just trying to find if you're open. I still don't even have the answer to that question as of right now, but if you fix this and this and this, you're in a good position." I didn't know that was going to lead to the owner then coming saying, I now heard you talking crap about my website. And I was like, dang, I was, but in a very intentional way, not in a way to like degrade, but in a way to say, this is missing the mark. Did I know he was going to be like, you know what? I want you, like, what does this look like if you were to do it? But the problem was I didn't know what website sold for. I didn't know what to charge for it. So I just knew businesses like to negotiate. And I knew at that time in my life, $1,000 would be life-changing money. And so I was like, if I say 1,000, they're going to negotiate down. So I was like, let me start at a higher number. They'll say a lower number and we'll meet in the middle of 1,000 and I will hop, skip, and jump my happy self to home, right? Because $1,000 would be life-changing money. So I said 1,800 and I was ready for them to be like 500. But you know what he said? Okay, how long will it take you? Now my mind is racing. I have 1,800? You gonna give me 1,800? And I didn't know how long it was even gonna take me to build the thing. But I said 2.5 weeks. And he's like, all right, let's do it. And he wrote me a check and my hands were shaking. And I rushed home and I just eat, slept, and breathed fixing this thing in between the gas station. I mean, and I'm not advising this. Twitter, don't cancel me. I'm not saying do this, but I barely slept for 2.5 weeks. Okay, like barely at all. Every waking moment that I had outside of the gas station, I was literally making that website. And you know what? That became a referral for a CBD store. That was the second website that I ever sold in my life, and that just started like the snowball. And so a lot of people, they think like they got to do these big projects. You can do a lot of these smaller projects. Now, I will admit, I didn't have your strategy at the time of just using some, like for the smaller projects, using a template that you can just pick. I did not have that at the time. Everything I was doing was from scratch. We'll be back to the episode in a second, but a word from our sponsors. Financial literacy is important, especially if you are in a position where you're changing careers or income brackets. More income can create larger financial issues if you don't budget correctly. So this episode is sponsored by Lucas Casarez, certified financial planner and founder of Level Up Financial Planning, where he specializes in serving early and mid-career tech professionals to help you take your financial confidence to the next level.
Danny and I have helped thousands of people level up in tech, often going from 0 to 6-figure careers, and we've seen all kinds of mistakes. Level Up Financial Planning helps you gain clarity on all your finances. This includes prioritizing and managing employer stock, retirement planning, tax planning and preparation, college planning, and as a special deal for all of our listeners, you get a complimentary meeting with Lucas. So please visit levelupfinancialplanning.com to find out more.
And the link will also be in the description. Now back to the episode. The reason why I say this is for a couple of reasons. Number one, when it comes to the strategy of like trying to get these deals, a lot of people aren't necessarily always going to respond directly to like a hard sell. You don't have to be the world's best salesperson to get this. You need to just rely on one thing. You are a problem solver. And I feel like a lot of people forget that when they try to freelance and like they're going through these cheesy sale pitches like, you give me 30 seconds, I'm going to give you $30. Like that kind of, you don't need to do that, man. Like people don't want to be sold to, but they do want to trust that the solution that they get is actually solving a problem. And the problem with a lot of people that try to freelance is they're like, I'll give you this website, but it's not even addressing what they're talking about. And so for me, a big strategy, and I'm trying to do this more as like, so I work for a tech consultancy. And so one thing that I've learned is as the dollar amount changes for a project, so does your approach. The higher the price point, the longer the sales cycle is going to be. And so like when you're talking about doing a $500 website or a $1,000 website or 2,000, whatever it may be, those are going to be a little bit faster to turn over, generally speaking, than a $500,000 project, $1 million project, a $10 million project. There's a lot that goes into those higher price points versus that lower one. But one thing that remains the same, and I'm trying to integrate this more at the higher price points since that's kind of like what my job revolves around now. But it's like, the power of an open-ended question is phenomenal. And so I think a lot of people, when they're trying to like get a client or basically in a sense sell, they're so focused on being the person with all the right answers. But it's like, if you don't know what their problems are, what are you giving an answer to?
Yeah.
And this is something I had to learn. I'm not a great salesperson. Like, this is not a
Yeah.
natural skill set for me. And so it's like everything that I've done in tech and like to sell and to have clients has been skills that I've had to learn along the way. But it's like when you ask someone like, what's the last problem you solved? Like what or what are you trying to address with this? Like you're
Yeah.
trying to implement this newsletter feature. Why? Like, what are you going to do with the newsletter?
Mm.
What is the ultimate goal? Oh, you want a customer checkout form on your website? Why? What is this going to do? And I'm using a strategy here that I used even in tech, working on a team where we develop tickets and like sprint refinements and
Yeah.
backlog refinements. So many devs, especially early on, are like, "Oh, you just need a checkout form? Boom, that's just a bunch of fields, la da da." But they don't ask, "Well, what are we doing with the data?
Yeah.
Like, we're collecting all this data from this form. What are we gonna do with it?" And then if they tell you, "Oh, we're actually implementing this in a feature where we're gonna send this customer like a personalized letter to kind of get them to buy more." It's like, whoa, I didn't factor that in. So maybe I need to actually think about the address data a little bit more. Like, do I need to validate that address data before I send it to the back or
Mm.
something? Are we using a third party tool to validate that? And if so, is that going to create a new drop down on the address field? None of these questions were asked there.
Yeah.
But when you start asking that open-ended question, what ends up happening? All this new level of information comes that the product manager didn't give you or the person who's over it. And that totally changes the dynamic of this being a $400 website to now being like, oh, this is a $10,000 product that we're now talking about.
Yeah. Which is where I think a lot of people kind of shoot themselves in the foot when they start the freelancing game, right? This idea of like, oh, I charge $50 an hour. And then you're going to wind up promising all these things. I'll build that form for you for $50 an hour. And it's going to take me 10 hours to do it. So this is a $500 site. You build the form and they're like, well, I want it to go to this database. I want it to go to this backend service. I want to connect it to HubSpot. Like, and then all these other things balloon out. And so, yeah, I love that idea of like actually talking to the folks, asking these open-ended questions, figuring out what you're getting yourself into. It's really important, or else you're not gonna be able to kind of provide the service that you want to provide if you're kind of trying to go about this in a real way. Um, it's kind of interesting. You're like on the so opposite end of where you started, right? Like from small restaurants to now like huge six-figure plus deals. If someone's listening to this, what do you think has changed? What's the difference between the $500 site and the $100,000?
I think the problem that you're focusing on and the solution that you're delivering is like a big focus. Making sure you solve that problem correctly, of course, is like always a big one. The level of conversations and like the climb to those levels of people that you need to talk to is always a little bit harder. But I think at the end of the day, it still comes down to the same thing. Like
No.
if you have 10 $500 sites or you have one $5,000 site, generally speaking, they're going to be in the same realm of time, right? So it's like you can go one way or the other, but sometimes you need to think about where. So for me, I think a big portion of success comes from your network. Obviously,
Yeah.
we're big on networking. It's pretty much given me everything that I have. You'll be so shocked where one conversation can take you, or it can snowball. Like one prime example, I was having one conversation with one person that I was networking with a little while, and this is just the other day, 2 days ago. I had an email come in for this big organization that wants to do an entire website redesign, and they don't have the manpower to do it, and so now they're leveraging us. So it's like one conversation is bringing a deal. It's like six plus figures out of nowhere, right? And so obviously having the right people to network with always helps. But if you don't have a network and you don't have people at these six figure, seven figure tier conversation levels, there's nothing wrong with literally picking up the phone and calling people at the $500 mark, $1,000 mark, et cetera, and start leveraging those because company owners know other company owners, team leads know other team leads. So it's like, who are you getting in a conversation with? And let's even go there. Like, if you were to, right now, Leon Jr. is about to go hit and try and get the first like client, what
Yeah.
would be the strategies? What would you be doing? What would you be trying to say? Okay, here's how I'm gonna go and get like if I have a week to get one paycheck coming in, what am I doing?
I do this every year.
I know.
It's like one of my like psychological safety things where I like need to know I still got it. So I've started already this year. Because where I'm staying, I'm still in sunny San Diego. I'm of course not in the $1 billion studio that we have normally. But there's a pizza place near me, and this pizza place did not have a website. So I was like, this is my sign. I'm ordering pizza from this place regularly. Well, not ordering, I'm having to like walk my butt over there and get it. So no website, they're new. I'm gonna pitch them, right? I'm gonna say, hey, like I couldn't find you online. I couldn't order. Do you have a website? And they were kind of like, no, we're kind of soft launching. I was like, look, I build websites. I think you have fantastic pizza. I would love to build you a site. And they kind of were like weird because they were like trying to give me pizza, like, and then they're like, okay. And I was like, great, let's set up a call. Like, I'm not sure I'll not to be right now, but I know you're trying to do the soft launch. Let's set up a call for next week. And I got their phone number, I got the time, so we're gonna have that call, right? Like, that's a lead just because I was there and they didn't have it and I did it. So like, all right, I can do this. I can still set up leads. So if I was going to do it today, here's what I would do. I'm assuming I have access to some way to build something. So I don't need a laptop. I can go to the library and build at a library. But what I'm going to do is I am going to build a list of every restaurant in my general vicinity. And so if I'm in a bigger city, great, I'm gonna build it out of all the restaurants. If it's a smaller city, I'm gonna build out that list same way, but I'm going to use Google. I'm going to look up all the restaurants. I'm gonna look at anything that has a Google Maps pack or whatever it could be. I'm gonna build out that list, and the list will be very simple. It's gonna be the restaurant, their phone number, website, yes or no. Is it good? Yes or no. And that's it. I'm going to try and get as many restaurants on that list as possible. Then I'm going to either dial for dollars or even better yet, I'm going to walk for dollars. And I'm going to show up in these restaurants places and be like, hey, you didn't have a website. I would love to help you build that website. Is the owner here? Can I talk to them? And you're going to just get laughed out of the room the first 10 times you do it. They're going to think you're weird. You're going to be awkward. You're not going to have any presence on how to like talk to these people. But the more you do it, you start to realize like, oh, they really care when I talk about this thing or I ask this question. And you kind of get over the awkwardness of it. And then they just start converting like real because they know they want a website. They know they need it to help with their orders. They just don't know someone or don't have the time to focus on it. And they're getting bombarded with other folks that are from Timbuktu and all these other places that they just don't know. But you're like a living, breathing person that they can shake hands with and see, and you're offering a solution to a problem that they actually have. You're going to close one of those leads. And I know you're going to close it because I asked my cohorts, every single cohort, to go out and do this. And we have had hundreds and hundreds of people that have followed the same strategy. Build a list and go after it. Right. So I know it works. Every cohort we get deals this way. With 100 devs, our last cohort we had over $500,000 in client sales. Like it's huge. So I guess to kind of boil this down, if I want to actually take a full step approach, Leon doing it day one, what am I going to do? First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to tell every single person I know that I build websites. I'm going to tell all my family members, every group chat I'm in, every thing I belong to. If I had church group, running club, they're all going to know, hey, I am building websites. Do you know anyone that needs a website or help with their online presence? And I'm going to ask them to share it. Please share this in any of the bulletins that you belong to. Share this to any of the groups that you belong to. Please post this on Facebook, Twitter, whatever it is. Like, I would love to help folks that need help, and you ask them to share it. You'll be surprised the number of leads you can get from that initial push. If that initial push doesn't get me my first client, I am then going to build out that list of, I'm going to start with restaurants because I can like walk in and talk to people and I want to hone that skill. I'm going to build a list of restaurants. I'm going to dial for dollars any restaurant that does not have a website. And I'm going to call and I'm going to be like, hey, they're going to wait if they pick up the phone. Restaurants are a little bit harder because it's often not the owner that's on the phone. But I'm going to say, hey, I'm trying to find your menu. I can't find it. Do you have a website? And they say no. Huh. Well, I'm going to try and place an order soon, but I build websites and I built you a beautiful site. Would it be possible to show the owner the site? Right. And there's some more strategies that we can talk about. But the idea is just to get them onto a follow-up call, like ideally that same day, ideally next day if possible. And in that call, talk about all the things they need, show them the site that I built from a template, and then try to close the deal. Right. So have that list of all the places that I called. Any place that didn't pick up or I got something positive from, I'm going to go in person. If I'm in a city, I'm going to walk until I can go to each place. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm going to leave my name and number, and I'm going to try to just get to the owner or whoever's there. A lot of times, if you go to the restaurants, not on a weekend, the owner will sometimes be there. So it's a little bit easier to talk, or it's family of the owner that's there. So it's a little easier to kind of have those conversations. And they're going to see that I'm a real person. And then I'm going to try and make the pitch there like, hey, I built this beautiful website. I think it could help you find more customers, get more deliveries, blah, 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 et cetera. And from that, I'd be very surprised if I didn't get my first client from physically showing up or physically calling and being in the area to where I can show up, right? If that doesn't work, then I'm going to start building out my online presence, certain niches to like make sure that I can kind of have the authority to show things. I haven't built a portfolio yet. I haven't built anything that like says I am who I am because I'm showing up in person, physical presence. Um, Once I have a fish on the line and they care about certain things, I can show them things that they care about. That's how I would do it. It's just a lot of hard work, but I know that it works because I've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people do it. So start local, start with friends, family, dial for dollars. And then from there, there's some strategies that we can talk about. I'm a big fan of reinvesting as your first dollars come in. So start off with simple templates that you know work, that are going to be beneficial to the restaurant, the trades that you're working with. You can find them often for free. Once you have the first bit of money coming in, you can upgrade the templates that you use so that they are more impactful for the orgs that you're working with. And eventually you kind of get yourself out of the smaller deal grind. That's mainly mindset. And eventually you get to bigger and bigger deals. For my students, I always say your first deal has to be $300 or more. And consistently, the difference between a $300 deal and a $5,000 deal is just they ask for more money. And so eventually you feel more comfortable asking for more money. You feel more comfortable having those initial conversations around like what's your ballpark budget, and the numbers kind of just go up. But in the beginning, strategy does not matter. Don't watch more YouTube videos on how to have call strategy. Don't watch more YouTube videos on how to sell. Just fucking show up. Just go, like, just show up in person, solve their problems, talk to real people. You can do it on the phone if mobility issues, whatever it can be, but like just show them that you're real and not some fairy tale somebody from somewhere else is trying to sell them. You do that, you'll get your first client.
Yeah, one thing I'll add to this, there's so much I want to add, but the one thing specifically
Sorry.
is when you say the price, shut the bleep up.
Yep.
The biggest thing that I see a lot of people mess up on is like, yeah, I'm gonna do the site for 500, but you know what? I'm flexible. I can go down to 3 if that's what you really need, or like, say the price and stay quiet because it shows confidence that you know, like this is actually a great deal. When you start trying to discount it verbally to ease their perception of the price, you've lost half the battle and you've
Yep.
opened the door to a conversation you don't want to have. So for me, it's more along the lines of, "Hey, I'm actually going to deliver this website. You told me these problems, so I want to make sure that we address these specifically. And in order to do this, the timeline that I'm looking at is around 3.5 weeks to kind of knock this out. From we were talking about something simple initially, where it's going to take a couple days. You've definitely stretched that out with a bigger project here. I want to execute this right. I don't want to deliver you something you're not happy with. So in order to do that, I'm going to need 3 weeks on this timeline, and we're going to hit bop bop bop, and it's going to cost you $750."
Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing you can tell people is the stop talking. It kind of shows that confidence. It shows that you're a professional. And then I think the only trick that I make to that is I like them to give me the number first. Obviously, we always want the number first.
Yeah.
And the way I do it is tell me what your ballpark budget is. And the reason I ask that is because sometimes you're talking to somebody that has a way bigger budget than you think they have, because it's a real pain for them. So some people that have real pain want to throw real money at the pain point. And so when I'm talking to a potential client, the first question I'll ask is, "Hey, all these things that you need, this connection, this delivery system, this ordering system, all this combined seems like a lot, and it seems like it's causing you a lot of pain. It seems like it's a headache. It seems like if you could fix this, your business and you would be a lot happier. So what is your ballpark budget to like solve all these problems that are like distracting you day to day? And then you stop, like you said. And a lot of times they maybe haven't even thought of a price point. So some common objections would be like, well, what would it cost to do all those things? Well, I can give you different price points, but I'm going to be building you 20 different proposals at 20 different price points for all the different things that you said. So if you actually give me a ballpark budget, you give me just a little bit of trust. I'm showing up in person. I'm going to give you a quick demo site so you can see that I can do the things you need to do. If you just give me a little bit of trust here and you tell me what your ballpark is, I can actually save us a month's worth of headache of going back and forth on this, get you a proposal that highlights what I can get done for you at that price point, and you still get to say yes or no. But that way, we're not wasting time going back and forth. So just like high level, we're talking 1,000, 10,000, $100,000 to solve all these pain points. Once you do that, I'm going to build you a beautiful proposal. I'm going to give you kind of a quick kind of overview design, and then we can kind of talk next steps from there. So what's your ballpark? Right? Sometimes it's $500. Great. Here's what I can get done at that price point. Sometimes it's 5,000, but if you had started with the 500, you just left $4,500 on the table.
I will say part of my strategy has always been I like being an informer, meaning
Yeah.
like I still believe this: an educated customer makes educated decisions, and so I don't try to hide stuff. And so sometimes there have been situations where I'm literally like, hey, you know what? I can knock this out for you, but if you feel that emphatic of you want the cheapest price possible and you just want something very basic, Squarespace is a great solution for this. Wix is a
Yes.
great solution for this. Like I would advise you to kind of look at those. And oftentimes I've heard, well, don't you get nervous about that? Like freelancing, like they could just use Squarespace. I'm like, no, because we have two different use cases, right? Squarespace, you want to just put something simple up that doesn't really solve a problem, but it's just something there. That's a great solution. And you pay monthly for it, $30, $40, and you got that coming out every single month. But if you have a specific problem, or you're trying to drive sales, or you're trying to drive awareness or something, or you're trying to solve something specific that you're going to be addressing as a freelancer, like you talked about this problem and you have this problem, and here's a solution for this that I can develop. That's totally different and that's worth its weight. And so for me, especially when I'm talking to restaurants, for example, it's like, especially during the pandemic, you know what I did a lot of? Even customers that had existing websites. You know what we did? Oh, don't you want to have a call to action or integration for Uber Eats or Grubhub? That by itself,
Yep.
we did that night and day because especially during the pandemic, there weren't anybody that really had that. Now they're all kind of over.
Yeah.
And so I think that in particular is like an easy win. And so you could still find places like that because hell, some places don't even have websites
Yeah.
altogether, right? So
But I think you also picked up on something really big there, which is like your superpower when you're first starting out freelancing is your ability to say no, but still be helpful, right? Anybody that gives me time, I'm giving them value. I might not build something for you, but I'm at least going to point you in the right direction. And so when you're working with a client that has no budget, but still has a pain point, hey, check out this Squarespace. They have like a lovely template. It's going to take you a couple hours to figure it out. I mean, that's why some people will choose to hire me is because don't have to worry about it. I get it built. It's done. Don't have to think about it. But if money's tight, I understand you're just launching right now. Check this out. Here's a good tutorial, a good video you could follow on it. If you ever need other services, let me know. People respond so well to that. I've gotten untold number of clients from folks that I did no business with because I treated them well, right? And so treat each person well, give them the things that they actually need, even if they're not the client for you, point them in the right direction. Be willing to say no. This is unfortunately not like something that's either in my skill set. I can't deliver it that quickly. I can't deliver it at that price. Like these are all things that I'm going to be willing to say no to. And then that's a really good place to be because people remember how you treated them. They become referrals later on should you need it. And the other thing too is I always try to like under promise and over deliver, right? So I'm always trying to make sure that I like estimate less time than I know it's going to take. That way, if I hit that mark, great. And I always try to leave room to get help. Every project I do freelancing wise, I leave time and money to get help on things that I get stuck on. Um, if they need some random integration I've never done before, I'm going to get help with that. And I have enough room in my budget, enough room in my time to figure those things out because I'm solving a problem for them. And I think a lot of folks early in their freelancing careers, the only thing that really, really get in trouble is when you agree to too much for too little money and you don't have enough time to get it done. And so being willing to say no, recommending folks other places, being kind, being all the things that you should be, can go a really long way.
Yeah, I called that the what the flub buffer. Uh, yeah, because stuff is not if, it's inevitable. Things will go wrong. Maybe your first project is smooth sailing, which, let's be real, your first project is not going to be smooth sailing. But let's say it is. Maybe it's the third project that really bites you. Maybe it's the fifth. I think having that practice from the get-go is good because let's say you say a project's going to take you 3 weeks to deliver and you deliver in a week with all the bells and whistles, they're going to think you're the best thing going. But if you still take the 3 weeks, you're right on time. You're still the best thing going. Um, but what's going to be terrible is if you say, I'll knock this out in a week, and then they're calling you, hey, it's been 10 days. Oh, I'm still working on getting it through and la da da, this one thing. Okay, cool. 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Then they're like, this dude sucks. Like, I'm never sending anybody to you to like
Yeah.
if it was me again. And so that's one area I never want to be in. I never want to be in a position where I don't feel like I'm in an advantage in the
Mm,
conversation. And so I'm very conscious of that in conversations. Like, when do I start losing leverage? And if I find myself
mm,
starting to lose it, what can I do now as I'm on the decline to bring myself either back to level or back to a mountain peak where I can be at leverage again? But
yeah.
once I'm in a position where the client has more leverage than me, I've already lost the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really good point to keep in mind, and it's funny how quickly that can swing during conversations.
Oh yeah.
What are the other things too that you kind of mentioned is like communication,
Mhm.
and I think that's another big thing that a lot of people that are new to freelancing kind of really mess up. One of the promises I make to every client as I bring them on is that you're going to get a message from me every single week. It's typically every Friday. Some clients I do twice a week. And every Friday, I'm going to let you know the things I got done.
Mhm.
Some weeks, I'm going to send you an email that says, hey, Bob, I got nothing done. And that's going to be phenomenal for you because most clients are going to leave you in the dark. They're going to not let you know when things are progressing. You're going to have no idea where you're at. But my promise to you is that I'm always going to communicate. You're always going to know exactly where I'm at. I might run into snags or hiccups or things where I need a little bit more time, but you will never be in the dark. That one quality has made all of my freelancing so much smoother. And so implementing something like that where you're updating your clients at least once a week, you're very upfront about that schedule, I think is huge.
You've hit something that actually I went through recently. I'll mention this publicly. I'm not afraid of looking bad on certain things. And this is my current role. I'm a director. And so obviously like I'm reporting directly to like my CEO, CTO, etc. And to be honest, I've always been this type where it's like you tell me to do something, I'm executing, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
working on it, I'm figuring it out, I'm doing it. And so the problem is sometimes I'm not over communicating every single step, right? Like I'm like, you told me to do something. Sometimes if you're like, hey, I need to get this done, I'm not even sending messages back up like, okay, I'm on it, I'm gonna do it, and let it out. And like, here's the steps I'm gonna take. I'm like, you said it needs to be done. That minute is when I start executing.
Yeah.
And so my CEO came to me one day and she said, Danny, I gotta be honest with you. Like, if I'm in a position where I'm like, what is Danny doing? You're already failing. Like, I shouldn't have to
Mm,
start thinking, what are you doing? If anything, I should already feel like I know what you're doing without having to ask myself, what is Danny doing?
yeah.
And so this is something that I've adjusted completely on everything that I'm doing now. It's like I'm telling them what I'm doing before
Yeah.
they feel like they need to even ask. Like they should already
Mm,
feel like they know the flow.
I love
And so
that. Yeah.
sometimes now I'll admit to me, it's very tedious because it's just the way that it works. Like I'm knocking. You told me you need something done. I'm knocking it out. Like you could take that to the bank. Is getting done. And now when I get blocked, I'll be the first one immediately to hit you up. Hey, I'm blocked with this. I need this done.
Yeah.
Or for my teams, it's like boom. I know they're blocked. Sometimes I don't even tell them I'm working on the block. I'm like I'm getting it unblocked for you because the next message to you is your problem is solved. You're good to go.
Yeah.
Right. But in a freelancing situation, and this is how I've adjusted as well. I've started even doing stuff like that with clients. Like, hey, we're actually executing upon this right now. I know you're probably thinking that's already happening, but I wanted to let you know how far along the
Mm,
execution process we really are, just so that way you know you're in the know. And I've had clients who literally come out saying, I really appreciate the transparency because I was wondering, where we are. And now I've got a client, a very large client, to where they're like, this is the most communication I've had and the steps, which is great, right? That's a great win. So they don't feel like when something goes wrong, they're blindsided at this point. Now they're like, and this was a growing moment for me. I'll be the first one to say it because I wasn't doing that previously. So it's been great from my perspective to start honing in my skill set as well. So I'm implementing that in pretty much everything that I do now. Even with my CEO now, like I'm setting in updates where I don't necessarily need to, but she's like, man, we're knocking it out.
Yeah.
And so that's, even though it feels tedious to me, I know other people are benefiting from it.
Yeah.
And so it just makes it more valuable to do in the long run. But you know what's the other thing too now that I've been implementing? As we start getting closer to actually delivering said product, right? Let's say we're at the 80% mark. I need to start planting a seed in them to be like, what are we working on next? I'm about to deliver. You're super happy.
Yeah.
You know what's happening. You know I'm executing at a high level.
Love it.
How we can't end before we start having Christmas parties together.
Yeah.
So what are we bringing next?
That's amazing. Oh yeah, that level of like client engagement is like a whole thing that I don't really typically have to worry about too much. But when you're at that caliber of client, those dollar values, one of the things I always tell people is don't go freelancing full time until you have at least 2 evergreen clients, meaning a client that comes back and gives you work after work after work. And so it's pretty cool to see like you're thinking about that strategy for each client at that level, because that's lots and lots of money going back into your pockets if you can turn a one-off client into an evergreen client. Yeah.
Well, at the enterprise level, like sometimes when you're working for a company, you're not really working for a company, you're working for a team. And so like the directors of that team, the engineering managers of the team, they're deciding who they're using, right? And so some companies, they have 5, 6, 7 different contractors, consultants that
Yeah.
they're utilizing, or freelancers, whatever it may be, right? So it's like, hey, we knocked this thing out. Like, do y'all have any? What do you want to work on next? Or what that ends up happening is, I don't actually have anything on our team, but I know the other team, the e-commerce team, they have something that they're trying to execute on. Let me have
Yeah.
you set up a meeting with them, or you know what? I'm a restaurant. I don't really have a lot of web presence, but you know what? My brother owns a dry cleaner and he needs a website too. Boom. So it's like,
Yeah.
keep it going. Go out, hang out with them, la da da. You never know where it goes down. Or the other thing that I always love is, let's say you submit the project, it goes well. You know what you need to do next? 6 months down the road, how's it going?
Yeah.
Like, is there something that we could fix here? Are you missing something? Do you feel like, I know we implemented one solution to kind of start tracking in some of the online traffic. Do you want to expand upon this? Like, how are your service offerings going for you?
No.
Boom. Those sometimes those conversations feel awkward. I'll be the first one to tell you that because you haven't spoke for several months. But keeping that line alive is always
for
great.
sure. Turns into a lot of new business. I guess for folks that are like thinking about all right, we've talked a lot about kind of freelancing, we talked a lot about like getting into freelancing. What are some of the traps you see? Like some of the things, some of the mistakes or things that you would want to know if you were starting to freelance like today?
I think there's a couple traps that come to my mind automatically, right? Like number one is almost, I don't have a good phrase for it, but like being abused in the relationship with your client. In the beginning, I'll be the first one to say this. I no longer, especially if I'm freelancing, I no longer maintain any projects. I just deliver and I walk away and I hook them up with somebody that can maintain it. It's great money if you can do it. But the truth of the matter is, if I'm being honest, it sucks for me. I like delivering and I like walking away. If you like maintaining, especially in the beginning, I'd probably maintain just to kind of keep it going. Charge like a monthly fee. They can reach out to you and I would tell them that, like, hey, we need to update images on your website regularly, right? Like, so send me the images every month. Let's put up some new signage. Let's say, we're doing an Easter sale and we're doing this 4th of July sale and we're doing this, Christmas sale, whatever, maybe Thanksgiving, Labor Day, Black Friday. You're updating it regularly. So they feel like they're getting a lot out of it. So that monthly fee makes sense. But there's a certain level where it's like, I don't want to maintain this. I want to deliver and move.
Yep.
And
I don't want to be on
so
the
I think
call
that-
at 4 o'clock in the morning because their email provider went down or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I did that in the beginning, and it took me a year and a half to where I was like, I'm done with that. So I think that's a trap. I think one trap is, and this is a big one, where the customer doesn't pay and they haven't done anything like, nah, I operate differently. Some people operate differently. My belief has always been, I'm getting as much of my money upfront as possible, if not all.
Yeah.
I've only had a couple clients ever like be like, "That's a crazy ask." Generally speaking, most people, they're used to that kind of thing, or like they're open to that. Some people want to do half. Some people want to do 30% because they're like, I don't know you. Are you going to disappear?
Yeah.
But I make sure delivery is not happening until I'm fully paid, and like everything is clear.
Yeah.
So that's generally how I operate. Everyone is different. You need to find what works well for you. Um, it's always been my thing, but I've
It's
just seen
also a
so many
great
freelancers get
filter.
burned. Yeah.
It's a great filter too. Clients that are gonna jerk you around and do horrible things aren't gonna pay a deposit. So even though you might lose someone because they don't want to pay a deposit, you just saved yourself months of headache because of it. So my rule is 50% down. When I was early in my freelancing career, it was 25%. And then you do work up to your deposit, right? So you do work up to your deposit and then they pay you the next tranche. You do work up to that. I should never be in a position where I've done the work and hasn't been paid. That's just not how I operate. Now, not everybody has that privilege at the beginning of their career, but you always want some sort of deposit. And then I think there's two things that I would say that you always need in a contract. And you should always use a contract. I'll link to the free contract that I tell people to start with. I'm not a lawyer. You get your own lawyer. This is not legal advice, but there are templates you can use to start off with that pretty much all the folks that go through my programs use. You can start with that. Once you have money coming in, get a local lawyer to do it to all of the things that you need, right? But in that contract, I always want two things. One is that I own all the rights to the things that I create, and I give you a universal, non-transferable license to the collection of works that I have made. So that means until you pay me in full, you actually do not have a license to use any of my stuff. So I'm never going to put your things on a server that you own until I've been paid in full. And even if you somehow got it, maybe it's all front end code or something, you still don't have the license to use it until I've been paid in full. So that's one of the really important things I always have in every contract. The second thing is an indemnification clause, right? Like, hey, I can't be liable for anything that comes with the result of the work that I've done. If you put up a new website and your pizza sales go down by 20%, that's not on me, that's on you. And so that's another trap I see people not making is they forget to have those two things in their contracts, and that can lead to a lot of mess.
And the other thing too, going back to one thing that you said about like the 50% paid in full.
Yeah.
Me personally, I think this also goes back to the conversation of like the tiers of value and price point. If you're talking about a $300 website, you gotta pay me $300. Like we're not doing 150, 150. But now when we're talking about a grand, 2 grand, 3 grand, this is way more. This
Yeah.
makes a lot more sense to have those percentages. So if you're talking to Joe's Pizza and they're like, "Hey, I just need a place where I can have a downloadable PDF version of my website." Cool. This is $500. Pay me in full. Cut me the check. Give me the cash. Whatever it is, I give you the receipt. Put it in my bank account. Let's get to work. But yes, you definitely need protection. And the thing that I remember having a conversation one time, this is in Memphis, Tennessee, where I was helping somebody get like their first freelance client. And it was like a $700 website. And I remember him saying, well, what if they just take the code? I was like, let them. But you know what's great? Small claims court really doesn't cost much at all to go sue them and to get what you need.
Yeah.
So you don't need to hire a big time lawyer, nothing. You just show the paperwork. This paperwork says right here that I own all of this until I'm paid in full. They have not paid me anything. And so I have my coverage right here. Simple. A lot of people think they got to get a whole law team and this. No, go to small claims court. It's very easy. Small claims court exists for these problems,
Yeah.
and that's the reason why they don't charge an arm and a leg to kind of get these things going.
Yeah. And it's up to like big dollar amounts in certain places, 5,000
Yeah.
plus in a lot of places. So yeah, it should cover a lot of your earlier contracts for sure. But always have a contract because
Always have a contract.
and doesn't see this super formal 20-page mess. There are some great templates you can use to
Dust it
start
off.
off.
Yeah. I was literally just about to say, like, it doesn't have to be this massive contract. It could be something simple. But also, like, we're talking about all scenarios because we want you to be protected, right? The vast majority of the time when you're having these conversations, you don't have to worry about getting screwed because that's probably not going to happen to you. But it would be foolish not to plan for something like that just in case that it does. All right, you want to do like an Ask Danny and Leon, and let's call this a wrap for today?
Yeah, let's do it. The question is, I am a sole dev in a company adopting tech. I'm struggling to learn new skills and gain team experience as a new developer.
The thing that I always say is like, as you're learning, keep having conversations, keep the resume polished, keep the LinkedIn active, keep the network going, and pivot when you can, right? Try and take that wherever you can, but keep that skill set high. Keep the accolades of what you've done in that organization very top tier, so that way you can mention it on the resume and the LinkedIn and be able to talk about that in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
That would be my strategy. So it's like, if you're the sole dev, there's a lot that you can own in regards to the initiatives that you've done and things that you've done. There's practices that you could develop, or let's say the company has no practices. Cool, let's implement some so we can talk about it and talk about those wins internally. Or I would use that as a leveraging point to, it's like, hey, we built this entire organization up to this tier. I need support now because I'm doing everything for you. Either give me this, or we have to come up with some kind of solution where this kind of works out.
I love
I
that.
guarantee you, an employer is either going to be very receptive or very hesitant. And if they're very hesitant, just be like, you know what, you're right, completely understand, and apply, apply, apply. Like, I would just be hitting that Indeed job board and the network and all the good stuff from there. That's kind of my strategy on that.
I love your advice about so many things because it just speaks to like taking control of your life. Like it's so easy to like be in that situation, and be like, these bad things are coming my way, right? But everything you just said is like, all right, how do I take control of the situation? How do I like make it so that I have like this body of proof that shows like, hey, I'm doing all these things, we're implementing all these practices the best I know how. I'm at a point now where I need more resources, or the things we're trying to achieve are going to start to diminish. And as soon as you can like take every opportunity in life that way, so many wonderful things can change. And so I think one of the things I love about the advice that we give is like, so much is in your control. You just got to take action and work towards it, and good things can happen. So I think you're 100% spot on, and exactly what I would share with other folks too.
Honestly, it comes back to the same thing. It's like, how much did I lose in life simply because I just figured people would be great and they would kind of do what they're supposed to do?
Yeah.
I no longer believe that. I believe I have to create an incentive for people to do it. And so it's
Yeah.
like, if they can't, even though I created the incentive, then I just need to put myself in a better position.
Right.
Um, but this is all doable. So to the person that's going through this, my heart's with you. My thoughts are with you. If you're going through it anyway, leave on the other side with exactly what you want, right? So
Heck
that's the best advice I could do. And the last piece of advice I'm gonna give to anybody, and this is kind of something that I've been doing over the last several months. One of the things that I still hate to this time is reaching out to existing clients. Like, this is part of my role. Like, I need to reach out to the existing clients and tell them like, hey, the client updates that we kind of talked about, but also like, are there things that we can do? Is there other initiatives and la da 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 da? Trying to plan out future things as well, right? I hate that, if I'm being real.
yeah.
But because I hate it, I've now made it the thing that I do at the beginning of the day instead of the end of the day. And the reason why is like, if I think that's the thing that I suck at, or it's the thing that I don't have a great skill at, or it's the thing that I really dread, I hated going through the whole day like, here's 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
I really got to knock this out. And it makes going to 3 o'clock such a painful process. But now if I knock it out at 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, the rest of the day is
Boom.
smooth. So I got the thing that I'm weakest at or I hate the most out of the way first thing in the day. And so that's, now I will tell you this much though. I feel like I've gotten so much better at talking potential clients because of that. And the other thing, which I didn't realize before as I was delaying it, is these are professionals, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
when I'm emailing them at 4 or 5 o'clock, they're already done for the day.
Yeah.
So they're not even seeing it till the next day. And all this
Yeah.
other spam and all these messages come in. So when they go in the morning and they're going through their inbox, I've reached down to the bottom. So now, by me sending it at 9 a.m., their day just started. I'm one of the first emails they see that day. They're responding a lot more faster and more frequently as opposed to me sending it at night. So that's kind of been an adjustment that I've made. And so if you're in that similar situation, make it the beginning of your day instead of the end.
Love it.
All right, Al. We'll see you on the next one. Bye, everybody.